The importance of keeping your word is a real thing in today's world, including within Christian circles. Listen, we live in a world where people, including Christians, say they're going to do something, but they fail to carry through and deliver on their word. Today I'm going to show you through the scriptures that God expects us to keep our word, carry out our promises. Why? Because when we give our word, we are making an oath. Made before God and man, folks. He's everywhere. And failure to do so leads only to God's judgment, broken relationships here on earth. So let's get started. Hey everybody, welcome back to Reason for Truth. I'm your host, Stevie Garofalo. Truth comes first. Reasons come last. We're always constantly learning. Well, stop learning, stop teaching. At least stop teaching well. And sometimes the truth hurts, folks. According to FullFocus.com, keeping your word is the essence of integrity. As Stephen Covey points out, honesty is making your words conform to reality. Integrity is making reality conform to your words. Pretty powerful. Keeping your word is essential to leadership. Without it, we can't be an effective leader. According to Merriam-Webster Dictionary, what is an oath? Well, it's a solemn attestation of the truth or inviolability of one's words, or something such as a promise, corroborated by an oath. In other words, you said something, you made an oath. Why is it important to keep your word? Well, whether you make a promise to a friend or a job application, or even a personal goal you made to yourself, it's crucial to stay true to what you say and honor your commitments. Not only can keeping your word generate trust and credibility, but also helps you achieve your goals and sustain growth in relationships. And I'd go as far as to say, without keeping your word, you're not going to achieve any of these good things. But it's important that we honor our commitments, even when it's difficult, even when it's expensive and inconvenient. So when I was growing up, I was told to keep your word. Even you do that, even if it costs you something. And that stuck with me. Simply put, our word is sacred. Our word is our bond, right? And keeping our word is essential to sacred vows and promises we make. Without it, society falls. Think about giving your word to follow Christ and then you fail at that and you take that back and you break that, right? None of us are perfect, but we have to make sure keeping our word. That's why we have vows when we get married, right? We're going to talk about that. When I was a young man, bond was your work, handshake, right? That was good as gold, right? The failure to keep one's word was considered an insult, and no one, for the most part, were willing to risk the societal rejection or capital based on other relational equity by breaking their word. In other words, it was embarrassing. I mean, if you broke your word, you were considered the outcast. Today, you break your word, they're like, whatever, that's the way it goes. You do it too, right? That's what they'll say. Everything's relative. But things have changed. Sadly, I continue to experience people, I think we all do, that don't keep their word, breaking their word, even within the church, Christian circles. This is a tragedy, folks, especially for them because it destroys the trust, it destroys their credibility. Some people say, well, it doesn't for me. Well, then, you know what? You're not thinking biblically. If people can't keep their word, keep their promises, keep their oaths, and you think that's okay, that's a problem. You better check yourself then. I'm just saying. That destroys all the trust that I have for people who don't keep their word. Or I should say had for them in keeping one's word. Listen, all of us from time to time may have to go ahead on back and not fulfill something if it's absolutely impossible, which is very, very rare. Sit down with a person, explain to them why you can't do it. You're sorry, but you're going to try your best to fulfill that. And then do your best. But for the most part, we should be fulfilling those oaths, our promises, even if it costs us something. All this being said, I want to look at some biblical truths on wisdom to see what God says about the oath and about a vow, because keeping our word is to make a vow. So what's a vow? Well, vows are voluntary expressions of devotion, usually fulfilled after some conditions that have been met. So vows made in the Old Testament, for example, are usually conditioned based on something done for the Lord or maybe for others. A common vow says something like this: if X, then Y. And I'll show you. Genesis 28:20, for example, says, then Jacob made a vow saying, if God will be with me and will keep me in this way. Then Jacob made a vow saying, if God will keep me and will keep me in this way, that I go and will keep my bread to eat and clothing to wear, so that I come again to my father's house in peace, then the Lord shall be my God. See that then the Lord shall be my God, and this stone which I have set up for a pillar shall be God's house. In all that you give me, I will give full tenth to you. Now, here's the deal. In the Old Testament, we see what happens when we break God's, the vow we make to God, and when we keep it. You get a blessing or a curse, right? A vow is more than an oath in that it specifically holds a response of condition. For example, when we get married, we exchange vows. These are promises we made to keep married, but making a vow, especially before or to God, can be very dangerous if not kept. So let's look Matthew 1 and John for some guidance as to the importance of keeping one's oath and the dangers of failing to keep an oath made to God. Matthew 5:33 in the NIV says it this way, "Again you have heard that it was said to the people long ago, but fulfill to the Lord the vows you have made." Matthew 5:33, it's in NIV. 1 John 2:5 says, "But if anyone obeys the word, love for God is truly made complete in him." This is how we know that we're in him. That's what it says, 1 John 2:5. In other words, if we fail to fulfill our vows, we're not in him, I don't think, meaning in Christ, at least not at that moment. I'd say that a person who fails to consistently keep their word has a very shallow faith at best and no faith at worst, okay? So why do I say that? Well, because how can one make a vow to trust the Lord and not keep their word to God thereforward? I would submit that their confession of faith, their vow before God, perhaps it wasn't authentic to begin with. I don't know. That's in the heart of you, and that's the heart of all people, and God knows all things. Can't hide anything from him. What about Matthew 5:27? It says this, "Let what you say be simply yes or no." Man, this is getting my goat. If you're asked a question, don't give a political answer. Yes or no. Can you do this? Yes? No. What do you think about this? Just give an answer. In other words, made it be plain. Anything more than this comes from evil. That's what God says, okay? Well, I'm going to read it again because I cut the verse in half. Let what you say be simply yes or no. Anything more than that comes from evil. Matthew 5:37. That's why all the politicians often, if they go off, listen, reading their teleprompter, they read really slow because they want to make sure what they say is scripted out and that they don't say anything that's going to get them in trouble, even if it's the truth. So I think that it's pretty clear. God's law says, do not lie under oath. Leviticus 19:12. Jesus makes clear here that to make a vow involved the pledge to what? Do something, to call upon God to witness the discharge of the action and to punish it if it were not carried out. That's why Jesus warned us to keep our word. Keep it simple, make it yes or no, an effort to, listen, don't make it too complex or we risk breaking our vow or our word. But above all, my brothers, do not swear either by heaven or by earth or by any oath. Let your yes be yes and your no be no, so that you may not fall under condemnation. James 5:12. On one hand, oaths themselves are not prohibited. On the other hand, a believer should not be forced to take an oath in order to tell the truth. Unrepentant deception will cause a believer to fall under God's judgment. And we fall under God's judgment or his discipline, that could happen now. And that final ring of disapproval and judgment seat that we face when we go to be with the Lord, well, you read about that in James 2:12 and 13. We have to be very careful. Make sure, we have to understand words have consequences. But remember, keeping your word is the essence of integrity. As Stephen Covey points out, honesty is making your word conform to reality. Integrity is making reality conform to your words. Simple as that. And that's essential to leadership. That's essential to your own credibility. It's essential to your own reputation. Why? First, because integrity is required for the trust, right? If people can't trust you, take you at your word, well, they're not going to trust you. Secondly, trust is necessary for influence and for all who are called to live life of influence and to follow others. If you want to lead others, whether that's in church or in business, you got to keep your word. People choose those who they allow influence them, and they choose who they want to follow. They may have to listen to you, but they don't have to truly respect you as a leader, okay? It comes down to trust. Third, and lastly, influence is essential for impact. You can't make the impact you want to make unless you can influence others and help change and shift their behavior. And in the end, keeping your word can be difficult. It can be expensive, inconvenient, but the cost of not doing so can be more expensive. It will be more expensive and more costly to your reputation. It will ultimately cost you relationships, your reputation, your ability to lead. And this, ladies and gentlemen, is the importance of keeping your word. That's all I'm going to say on it. So listen, I'm going to keep giving you my word. I'm going to come out and do another episode. So saying that, make sure you do a couple things. Share this with others. Let them know that I gave you my word. Then go and hit the like, subscribe button. Boom, hold on, I jumped ahead of myself. Bam, Gonzalo Sinistro. Hit that subscribe button. And if you want to join my community, no charge. Stephen Garofalo. You get some of these transcripts. You'll as well get some exclusive articles and a very private post that only we post there. So we'll see you over there. God's blessings to you. I'm your host, Stephen Garofalo, and this is your Reason for Truth for today.